So I'll speak just a little bit before we move into the asana about the texture or the thematics behind the practice that will intermingle today. And I was just noting with a friend yesterday that, it may very well be, hopefully, will be many, many generations after us. Until another kind of global pause may need to happen again. And it's such an innovative time in the persistence field of really quickly training or reprogramming this sense of productivity, which in a sense has been tied to yang activity and how much external stimulus we get during the day. And in a sense, that measure of success has completely halted. And the very nature of our day-to-day existence has shifted. And it may be that we're the last generation for many, 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 many moons forward that will experience this refining of the daily rhythm of life. And so the opportunity, I think all these weeks down the line now has become more and more clear, particularly for practitioners of mindfulness and mindful living, that the quality of presence that is available when we refine our normal habitual patterns of excitement and productivity and movement and activity, all of that has fallen away. And so the ego has this earth-shattering event where we get to redefine how we measure success and what a productive, impactful day feels like in this new rhythm. And so in a sense, what I'm really speaking towards is the truth of impermanence. Because many of the comforts of life, the things that we really cherished, have been sharply removed, and we're still finding a sense of ease, even in the midst of turbulence and loss. And so the teaching that's been really compelling for so many generations since, the Buddha's first insight was that mental suffering lessens when we really understand the truth of impermanence, when we learn to ungrip from things that we wish would stay as they are, because that's impossible. And so impermanence, the word for impermanence is anicca. And it's the crucial basis in this foundational understanding of present moment awareness. And we really investigate and train in that by way of the breath. And so the Tibetan Buddhist standpoint with impermanence that we use to train is in Shamata, breath awareness practice. And so we'll use Shamata meditation today, and we'll also intermingle the foundational mind changing of impermanence. So how to contemplate its existence, how to use that contemplation as the basis in a yin pose. And then we'll also intermingle that with a kind of spring cleanse, liver, gallbladder, meridian focus. So it's the element of wood. And for the late spring months here, we'll be using that liver, gallbladder channels, the yin and yang chi flow of the wood element, to cleanse out any aggression in the system. Okay. So let's find a wide-legged forward bend. You'll just bring the legs into an external rotation as you straighten. And some of you might find it more supportive to prop the sit bones up on some padding, or perhaps some padding underneath the knees, and then we'll find forward flexion with the spine. So roll forward and close the eyes. So the liver line that we're engaging or manipulating the flow of prana through starts at the big toe and up both sides of the inner arches of the feet. It comes just behind the shin bone, along the medial aspect of the knees, and up through the inner thighs, where it enters the inner groins and up into the torso, penetrating the liver, the gallbladder. It comes up along the outer ribs, finding an acupuncture point in the collarbones, and it opens up through the throat and jaw into the eyes. So it's often said that health of the liver is reflected in the eyes. The gallbladder channel is that opposite orientation of chi flow. So from the outer corners of the eyes, it flows along the outside of the body. So while the liver line is the yin channel on the inner body, the gallbladder is the yang meridian, and it comes down the neck and shoulders, along the waistline, through the outer hips, and it ends in the fourth toe. So we'll be working both of those channels. But for the last minute in this forward bend, we'll utilize foundational aspect of any yoga practice, be it yin or yang, as we come into observation and manipulation of the length and direction of the breath. So let's take a deep, slow inhale into the low belly. And using ujjayi, a little constriction at the back of the throat, just for the exhalations, press the exhale out through the inner leg line, all the way through the big toe. Yes, we'll keep that breath patterning going. So it's an in breath into low belly, the hara center. And a little texture through the back of the throat as you exhale, and you clear out any patterns of aggression or tension through the inner leg line, out the big toe. Just like that, a few more rounds. Because the liver is responsible for hosting the emotion of aggression, frustration, and this often occurs when we forget the truth of impermanence. There's much less reason to become aggravated when we know that this won't last very long. This precious, impermanent, ephemeral experience. So using the last few rounds of breath to just wash out any debris of stagnation through the inner leg line. And we'll use the inhale to draw up. Drawing the legs together, bending into the knees, soles of the feet come to the floor and the hands come behind you. We'll point the fingers forward towards the top of your space. And we'll use an inhale to come into reverse tabletop. Opening the throat, threading through the front of the rotator cuffs, and then exhale, drop the sitting bones down, reach prayer hands forward and round into a cat pose, chin to chest. Inhale through your cactus arms, so opening through the front of the collarbones, fingertips straight behind you as you peel the pubic bone up and thigh bones open, curling open, in breath. And exhale, dropping the weight of the pelvis down, and then letting the trajectory of the spine fold forward as you bring prayer hands out in front of you, curl into the chest. 3 more times, using breath. And even bringing the movement into the neck and the base of the skull. And either keeping the gaze soft or the eyes closed, another healthy practice for the liver is decreasing stimulation through the eye door, particularly all of this time we're spending connecting on screen. And still using that ujjayi just for the exhalation. We'll do a little bit of movement practice to move into the asana of yin later on. So you can keep that ujjayi going. And when we find the next reverse tabletop, we'll come through Kapalabhati breath. So if it feels okay on the neck, you can drop the head to rest like a hammock on the shoulder girdle. And taking a deep inhale, we exhale and find Kapalabhati. That's the emphasis on the exhalation as you pump the low belly and the breath comes through the nose. Press the base of the big toe into the ground, slide the thigh bones forward, keep going for 3, 2, and 1. Drop the pelvis down, curl the chin to chest, and draw prayer hands forward, breathing into the back of the heart. Let the base of the ribs spread wide. And then some movement here, keeping hands in prayer, and just stirring the pot of low belly. A little bit of core engagement here. Yes. And then we'll take it through the other side. So switch directions. And then just front and back. Adding a little bit of lubrication into acetabulum and the femur head. So hip sockets juicing up. Low belly turning on, finding hara engagement. And you can stay here, or you can lift the legs and pulse it out on the in-breath, and exhale, pull in. Three times. Try not to take these in the hip flexors, yeah? So this is low belly engagement. Less of the psoas. Come all the way up and through into a malasana frog squat. And some of you might choose to sit on a block. As you bring hands to prayer, plug the thumbs into the sternum. Come forward here. And then you can press the elbow points into the inner knee. So we're finding that point of the liver channel here, a little stimulation. And close the eyes. Drawing awareness down, soft gaze through the back of the skull and down into low belly. So the teachings, the Tibetan Buddhist teachings on impermanence suggest that we train first in understanding impermanence intellectually, where we actually use the practice to convince the mind that change is an inevitable part of existence. And so we need to hear that from teachers. And when circumstances tend to be non-preferable, we have the tendency to think of happier times in the past and kind of wonder what went wrong. The reverse is also true. When we're really in a state of bliss, we have the fallacy that maybe things can stay just as they are. And so we have this gripping. We use intellect to teach ourselves because the mind's easier to train than the heart. So first, intellectually understanding the truth of change. Convincing the mind, then we can penetrate through the heart and really have a visceral understanding of anicca, impermanence. So we'll add a little bit more movement in this malasana squat. On an inhale, you'll draw prayer hands forward and fold in. And on an exhale, again, that cactus elbows. And some of you might come off of the heels and lift onto the toes. Yeah. So inhale, rounding, drawing in. And exhaling, opening, curling. Yeah. So this impermanence really can be seen in a reflection of the outer world around us. Even the Himalayas, which are the tallest mountains on the planet, are still growing. And they were once underwater, so you can find sea fossils on the top of these peaks. And if that's not an indication of the changing state of environments, then at least the asana practice embodies it as well. Let's find a forward bend. Hands can take the weight off of the knees as you point the heels directly behind the toes and fold forward. The knees can stay bent. Yeah, beautiful. And then once we train in the intellectual understanding of impermanence, then we can adopt the emotional attitude. when we realize that happiness isn't a state that can be permanently achieved. And also that it's impossible to avoid sorrow. It's part of the path. So we feel much more committed to our inner practices, to our spiritual lives. Our dedication strengthens, rather than clinging to impermanent phenomena. It's one of our greatest forms of suffering, right? Strong emotional attachment to loved ones. But all humans change as well, so we often become unable to cope when we grasp onto beings. If we know with certainty in the very beginning of our relationships that they never will continue in the same manner, then our suffering would not be as nearly intense. And the same is true of physical sensations. So just allowing, rather than choosing to avoid. There's really no controlling any of it. Our physical body, the process of aging, the environment around us, the state of the world. The only thing we can control and master is our own tolerant endurance to what's arising. So we'll come through just a slow lunar flow, and you'll use an inhale to draw the spine all the way up. And as you weight the heels and spread the toes, you'll lift up through the crown, roll the shoulder heads back, and bring the hands to the low belly. We'll find 5 rounds of silent breath here. And then inhale, reach the arms up and overhead. And exhale, forward bend. On an inhale, step the left leg back, left knee down. Hands can come to the thighs, or to the floor, or onto blocks. 5 breaths. That back toe can stay tucked under or top of the foot on the floor. Drawing the right sit bone towards the left heel as the muscle fibers, the spindle fibers at the front of the quadricep soften on the left side. Open in the low belly. And drawing the frontal rib cage slightly back, so you bring the weight of gravitational pressure down the left femur. And at the bottom of the 5th exhalation, drop back for child's pose. 5 breaths. This time, left leg comes forward for the dragon lunge. As you find slight internal rotation in that right thigh, pull the pelvic floor up, but stay low in the low abdomen, and find your 5 rounds of breath. If you're looking for a deeper psoas stretch on that right side, I like to press strongly the top of the right foot down and hug the right gluteus in. It's a forward bend at the bottom of that 5th exhalation. And on an inhale, we draw the fingertips up the front line of the shin for a half lift. Roll the inner thigh bones in and back, and exhale, fold, widen the sit bones. And inhale, lift all the way up through your mountain pose, fingertips up over the crown. And exhale, hands float back to Hara center, low belly for 5 more rounds of breath. Using the still points in the practice to galvanize our attention to the center. So the very center of our being, about 3 fingers width below the navel and 3 fingers width in towards the spine, Hara center, we radiate presence and the flow of chi through the liver gallbladder channel from that central storage site of our life force. We'll inhale, lift the arms up and overhead. And exhale, fold. Right leg steps back. 5 breaths in your dragon lunge. Some of you may choose to reach the arms up and overhead. Hug both outer hips in. And still choose to galvanize your attention at the Hara center. That sphere of awareness, the radius of the center line from the pubic bone to the rib cage, but again, very center point just below the navel. And the fingertips float down for your child's pose, Balasana. The knees can come apart or together, just whatever the degree of opening that the hip flexor desires. 5 breaths. And then it's right leg forward for dragon lunge. I'm already just feeling the quality of presence as it becomes more subdued. As you focus your attention on the breathing body. One of the most beautiful aspects of the sun salutation practice or the moon namaskar is moving the torso to shift the positioning of the organs. More room for the diaphragm to drop, the lungs to fill. Richer breath. Fingertips drop down. And this time we'll just pull that right shin bone across the front of the mat for a half pigeon. And if you'd like, you can bring a blanket or some padding underneath the right hip. And rather than a priority in perpendicular tibia, I'm okay with that heel coming towards the pubic bone, so that you can internally rotate through the left thigh. And ground down through right sitting bone. We're working the gallbladder channel on the right side. So we'll come into a forward bend. Beautiful. Letting the belly rest. There's an aspect of control that we think we have. And so we can tend to harden and constrict just above the pelvis. It's almost a protector defense mechanism of holding in the surplus or fluctuation of emotions, the wave-like endurance of sensation that washes across the beach of the low belly. And in this shape, we endeavor rather to let the abdomen drop and then widen. So any tendency of constriction or congestion here, particularly on the exhalations, we can unravel and soften. We'll practice that for 3 more rounds of breath. And then the inhale draws you back up. And you'll come onto the outer edge of that right hip and just swing around for the other side. Again, whatever padding or propping you need, you can also take figure 4 on your back. We're looking for that compression in the connective tissue that houses the gallbladder channel. So finding your forward bend. And again, you can utilize the length and directionality of the breath. Inhaling into the pelvic floor, the very roots at the mula. And exhale, just washing a line of energy down the inner right thigh, all the way out the right big toe, where the liver meridian initiates its flow of chi. Inhaling through the mula, pelvic floor lifts into the low belly. It feeds this uprising of earth chi into the hara center. And exhale, you drift any accumulation of tension, congestion, overwhelm, aggression, all the way out the liver line on the right side body. We'll practice that for 5 more rounds of breath. Inhaling into the mula. And exhaling, drawing it out the right side of the liver meridian, out the big toe. That whole inner leg line cleansing. As you feel the accumulation of chi force on the inhale in the low belly. And then that clearing, that almost vibratory shifting of stagnant energy down the right leg, inner right leg through the big toe. And lifting up onto the fingertips. And drawing the left leg back behind you, coming all the way onto the belly. And coming into full pranam, Danda pranam, belly down, forehead down, arms forward, full prostration. Let the back body melt towards the front body. And then let the front body dissolve onto the ground. And as the front body dissolves, it also takes with it a lot of the frenetic tensions that accumulate in that front line of defense, the front aura field. It's like any fuzziness drains out and down. Any fogginess. As we experience from the center line a refined perspective of clarity, insight, cleansing mirrors of our perception. Let's find 3 more rounds of breath here. And some of you might choose to take your prayer hands and float them behind the base of the skull as you draw the elbow tips forward and press the triceps down and the shoulder head down. As you lengthen through another line of congestion from the armpit out that elbow tip. And because kidney feeds into the health of smooth liver chi, we'll find a back bend to stimulate the kidney meridian here. So prayer hands drop down. as you prop up onto your forearms, and you bring the elbow points just a touch forward of the shoulder heads. Tops of the feet on the floor. Pubic bone pressing down. Beautiful, Madeline. Loving Shivani's leopard print pants. So any low back sensitivities here, draw the diaphragm of pelvic floor up to low belly. And then most of you would benefit from also drawing the tissue just behind the navel. So in front of the sacrum, that soft tissue of the low abdomen, draw it back towards the spine. Yes. Now let the low back move away from the pelvis. So the low back lifts towards the base of the skull. The low belly lifts towards the sternum. And then the last line of energy we'll draw here, collarbones widen. Gorgeous. So there's a subtle touch of kidney chi infusion. Healthy vitality of the water element to aid in the detoxification processes of the liver, which produces the bile responsible for breaking down fats. While the pancreas builds enzymes to break down the water-soluble structures in the blood. The liver breaks down heavier substances. So a lot of the environmental toxins and vices like alcohol and fatty foods are found in the responsibility of the liver to break down. So dysfunctional liver cells, overwhelmed and overworked, become fatty tissues and can lead to the very risky disease of cirrhosis. So working liver line from a Chinese medical perspective. We help a subtle infusion of the pranic body to help detoxify. And of course, that's not just the toxins we ingest, but also the emotional toxins of agitation, frustration. So we help to soothe that out through liver practices. We'll find 3 more rounds of breath. And for those of you that want a little deeper kidney infusion, you can come into seal pose by way of straightening the arms. Beautiful. And then pressing down and forward in the wrist crease. Send the bottom tip of the sternum bone forward, but keep the collarbones wide. Yes, Madeline, that was it. 3 breaths, 2 breaths. And exhale, find full pranam again, all the way down, arms forward. Rest the decompression of the sacrum, the heaviness of the hips. The liver, of course, sits On the right side, just above the stomach and under the diaphragm. And it opens up into the gallbladder. So 3 chi breaths here. On the inhale, into low belly, into that hara power center, the reservoir of rich, vital chi. And then exhale, send it to the liver. Fresh, invigorated prana to the detoxification system. And just one more round like that. Gorgeous. So let's bring the left cheek to the mat as you cactus the elbows. And you slide the right knee into a half frog pose. So the knee comes to the height of the hip. Yes. And so the inner right thigh is resting. And if this is tweaky on the SI joint of the right side, draw the left hip in. And then you might even want to prop the right knee so that it's in line with the right hip joint. And that will mitigate any tensile stretching of the sacroiliac joint. This is a passive, more restorative flow or flood of chi through the right side of the liver line down the inner leg. And also like a giant earth hug for Earth Day. Let the organs feel held by the ground beneath you. And coming into a supine twist from here, you'll just draw the left arm bone underneath the torso, like you're threading the needle. And you'll come onto the outer edge of the left hip, and you'll roll the left arm bone open. So the right knee might lift off the ground as you find a grounding in the shoulder girdle, spinning towards the back. Yeah. And then some of you might choose to work the gallbladder channel on the right side by way of straightening the right leg and pressing through the base of the big toe. And then drawing the outer edge of that right hip and the right sitting bone towards the left heel. Kind of that same adduction we found in the dragon lunge, where we work to square the outer edges of the pelvis and draw long through the right waistline. You can just imagine here that my hands are along the outer edge of your right hip and pulling the hip towards that left heel. As you spin the frontal rib cage open to the sky. 3 breaths. So beautiful. It's the exhalation that will draw you all the way back to your belly with both legs long. Cactus elbows brings the right cheek to the earth as you slide into Ardha Mandukasana on the other side, that half floor frog. Left knee draws up to the height of the left hip. So the back of the heart softens in. The front of the heart and the clavicles spread wide. And we meet ourselves anew, refreshed in the constant evolution of change, the confluence of circumstance. So how do we meet ourselves now? Understanding on an intellectual level first. An emotional integration, secondly. The nature of my feeling body is ever shifting. We have an interest as practitioners just to stay awake as the changes come. We don't know what's in store next, so we can choose to indulge in the quality of life now. We'll find our supine twist through that threading of the needle, right arm underneath the body, spinning all the way onto the back, and finding your own embellishment to the shape. You have time to enter in, so feel the luxury of slow transition. Right? Change is an inevitable truth, but transition is a luxury. The way that we meet change is a choice. As the left shoulder head draws down, now letting the front of the heart melt to the back body. Tendrils of chi from the heart melting down to the low belly as the left waistline lengthens. 3 breaths. Rolling all the way onto the spine as you draw the knees into the chest. Compressing the front of the hip flexors. And also finding a press of the femur bones to the ascending and descending colon, assisting in digestion. For Ananda Balasana, we'll find happy baby for our last pose. And the traditional cueing would be to grab for the outer edges of the feet. I've found in my own practice, I really like to grab the inner edges and then use the engagement of the arm bones along the inner shins. Yeah. It's a different flavor here. Keep the base of the skull down and the shoulder girdle feeling wide. And if you can't reach the feet, you can draw the hands to the inner thighs and press down. And now the inner knees draw energetically actually towards one another as you deepen and lengthen the groins. 5 breaths, inhaling through the pelvic floor to Hara. And exhaling out both leg lines, liver channel and the gallbladder channel. Lower legs getting a full chi flush. To the inner methods of the structure of the asana practice, directing chi flow. Strengthening our pranic capacity to endure, become resilient in the midst of change. And we'll release the grip of the feet and draw the limbs long for Shavasana. And if you have any props to support you, such as a scarf or eye pillow, or a bolster under the knees or a blanket, use this time to situate the self for a sustainable Shavasana. We'll move through a meditation together on impermanence. Contemplative meditation. On the inhale, the contemplation I value this precious, ephemeral existence, like a tiny splash of a raindrop, lightning in the sky, this brief display of vitality. I'm impermanent. And the exhale is just to focus on this certainty, the nature of change. I may not have the opportunity to take a next breath, so I'm interested in staying awake. The very end of the exhale, not knowing what's in store. So the inhales again, just breathing in that value, the rich gratitude for the precious existence that's yours this one time only. And on the exhale, just settling into that feeling of certainty in the impermanence of life. I'm interested in staying awake because I don't know what's in store next. It's as if every exhalation is a reminder that it could be your last breath. I may not have the opportunity to take a next breath. So then the inhalation brings you that supportive condition to have had the good fortune to take another breath. Who knows if these conditions are going to continue in the future? Inhaling the good fortune to take this breath. Exhaling and settling, watching the rhythm of respiration flow out to the very edge. Reflecting on the impermanence while directly working with the breath. Using each turn of breath to deepen our understanding. In the end of the practice, we close with the merit practice of offering gratitude. Letting a sense of joy infiltrate the contemplative breath practice. So use the breath to channel this attitude of rejoicing. How wonderful that I have the opportunity to value and use each moment. So the inhales, how fortunate am I that my life has lasted long enough to experience this in-breath. And the exhale, may I use the remainder of my life wisely. As you center on the commitment to stay spacious and wide and open, awake. For the new circumstances that await you. And you're welcome to stay in Shavasana until tomorrow morning if you wish. And I'll close the practice now. If anyone's interested in having the recording, I can send you an email, have a copy. So I'll just write in the chat bar here my email address for those of you that want a copy of the class, and also the number account to my Venmo as well. Namaste.